Welcome back to Weigh the Wrench, and on today's video we are going to be installing a 7.1 surround sound feedback system into our virtual pinball cabinet, and it's going to get it that much closer to being done and feeling and sounding like a real pinball cabinet. So go grab a root beer, turn up the volume, and let's get started. So the first question you probably have is, what is SSF? Because that's a term thrown around a lot in the virtual pinball community. SSF stands for surround sound feedback. Now the first part of that, the surround sound, means that we are going to set up a sound system in here so that any of the sounds coming from the playfield will actually come from the location that they are actually making them on the playfield, which makes it more like a real pinball cabinet. Now, to kind of drive that point home, right now I only have 2.1 sound in this whole cabinet, and I've been playing with that. So what that means is any sounds from the playfield, so ball rollings, flippers, pop bumpers, any of that stuff, is all coming up from the back box, which makes it a little weird when you're hitting a flipper way down here at the front because it's coming from up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to install some equipment so that the sounds from the rear of the playfield come from the rear, and anything at the front of the cabinet will come from the front. And to top it all off, when a ball maybe rolls down from the back to the front, there's going to be a seamless transition of the sound emanating where it should be. Now, the next part of that is feedback, so let's talk about that. Now, as for the feedback part of it, we're going to be installing some components in here that are going to allow us to not only hear the sounds, but we're actually going to be able to feel the vibrations of those sounds. So when we're playing pinball, every flipper hit, every ball rolling down the playfield, every pop bumper, we're going to be able to feel and hear that. Now, let's back up a little bit so we understand how that's possible. Now, what we're looking at here is a regular speaker that you would find in a regular sound system. Now, the way it works is on the back, there's two connections here where we send our signal. And that's going to be a varying positive and negative voltage at a certain frequency, which we recognize as music. Now, when you put voltage through here, we're going to make an electromagnet. Now, these speakers have a real permanent magnet on the back, and so as you make a certain polarity on here, this speaker cone is either going to be attracted to the magnet or repelled from the magnet. And when this moves, it pushes out sound waves, which we recognize as music. Now, we're going to be using something called an exciter, or another name for it is called a transducer. Now, instead of a regular speaker pushing air to make sound waves, this just vibrates back and forth, and whatever you mount this to is going to vibrate and turn into that sound that we're going to hear. Now, just like speakers, these come in different sizes. So these little mini kind of puck style ones are going to be for our higher frequencies. Meanwhile, we've got bigger versions of these, which are usually called bass shakers. It's the same principle, but it's a bigger, deeper kind of vibration so that we get our low bass notes out of these. So you are going to have to purchase some parts to be able to get SSF in your virtual pinball cabinet. Now, I did make a really good parts video, and I will put that link above for you to be able to watch that. That's all the parts that I needed to be able to make my virtual pinball cabinet. However, I thought today would be a good idea to just quickly go through only the stuff that you need to buy for an SSF system. So let's take a look at that. First up, you're going to end up needing 4 of these exciters so that you have left and right for the front noises and left and right for the rear noises. Now, the exact exciter I'm using here is a Dayton Audio DAEX 58FP. They're 8 ohms each and 25 watts of power. The next parts you're going to need are 2 of these bass shakers. Now, I have used Dayton Audio BST-1s, and it's going to be for the front bass sounds and the rear bass sounds. Now, you don't need these per se. There's a lot of builds out there that just use the 4 exciters. However, I am of the opinion that if you have an amp that has that 2.1 capability, it has that subwoofer capability, then why not use these? That way you can get those low kind of sound effects from the front and back as well. The next parts you're going to need are some amplifiers to be able to drive our exciters and our bass shakers. Now, in my situation, I only bought 2 of these because I have a Logitech 2.1 computer speaker setup to drive the music in my back box. However, if you have 2 separate speakers and another subwoofer for your music coming out of your back box, you may actually require a 3rd one of these. Now, what this is a TB21 power amplifier. It's a 2.1 channel, which means that this should be able to power 2 exciters and 1 bass shaker. Now, the reason why I have 2 is one of them is going to be for the front sound effects, and the other one's going to be for the rear sound effects. Now, about the only thing I can suggest about these guys is make sure that the RMS rating for the watts and power that this can do at least cover the RMS rating for your speakers or your exciters. If this isn't powerful enough, you'll have something called clipping, which will shorten the life of your exciters or your speakers. Now, when you open it up, you'll see that it kind of comes like IKEA furniture, where they try to keep the cost down and you have to assemble it. So you got your main board here with all the components already put on. You've got kind of instructions, but not really great. They could kind of do with a little bit extra to be able to help you assemble this. There is a screwdriver here with a bunch of the knobs that are going to go on top of these potentiometers, so that you have a knob to control your volume and bass and things like that. There's also a little connector in here where you can put your power, positive and negative, to the back, tighten those up, and then this clips in to the back here so that you can power up your amplifier. And then the last little bag here has two plates, and the first one is basically the instructions and what does what on the top, so you can understand what you're adjusting and how you're plugging stuff in. And then the other board is just simply a backing piece. And then there's a bunch of standoffs in here that kind of don't make that much sense, but you can see here there's a shot from the side where there's a little short standoff from the bottom that you screw in. Then the taller standoff helps hold the board away from the components. You just snug those up, and there's your completed amplifier. The next thing you're going to need is a sound card capable of 7.1 surround sound. Now, there's 3 different ways that you're going to be able to get this to happen. I'll show you the first one. This is an external sound card. It's a very popular one that's used in the virtual pinball community. It's made by StarTech, and this is a 7.1 sound using USB. So this can be externally from the PC. The sound files come from our computer when things happen in the game, and through 3.5 auxiliary cables, we get that going to the proper amplifier, and we get our surround sound. Now, this is one option. Let me show you the other ones. Now, the second way to get yourself set up with 7.1 surround is take a look at the audio jacks on your motherboard. If you've got a fancy enough motherboard, it'll have an integrated sound card that is built for 7.1. Now, in my experience, if you've got 6 of these multicolored 3.5mm auxiliary jacks, that's going to be 7.1 surround sound. Now, if you're not sure, you can also just go and look for the actual model of the motherboard. Google that and see if it's 7.1 surround sound capable. Now, in my case, my motherboard that's installed in the virtual pinball cabinet does not have these 6 ports, so that's why I went with the external sound card. Now, your third option, if you don't have this, is you can also put in an internal sound card that will plug into your PCI or your PCI Express slot, and just make sure that it is capable for 7.1 surround. Now, the chances of your USB cable with your external sound card being long enough to get all the way to your computer and being in the position you want for the front of the cab is pretty highly unlikely. So you're going to need a USB extension cable. So one end has to have the female, and then the other one has the male, so that you can actually plug everything in and get it to your computer. Next thing up is you're going to need some 3.5mm auxiliary audio cables. Now, you're going to need at least one of these for every amplifier that you have. So I've got my 2, so I've got 2. Now, don't spend a lot of money on these. Go to the dollar store. Most important thing is the length. Make sure that you have a long enough cable to be able to get to your connections. And, if 3 feet's not enough, you can always go 6 feet. They're not much. Like, literally, I paid $2 for these here. Next thing up is this ground loop isolators. Now, you're going to want one of these to go with every amplifier. And they simply just plug in between with your 3.5mm auxiliary audio cable. And the idea behind these is these will prevent any kind of unwanted noise or feedback or any kind of issues with sound. It prevents it from getting to the amplifier so that you're not amplifying that feedback and having noise coming out of your speakers. Really quite cheap and well worth it, especially if you haven't bought these and you're having some noise issues and hum and feedback. Next part is a speaker grill cover. So the sub for the 2.1 Logitech system that's at the bottom of the cabinet, there is a hole for that bass music to get out so I can hear it. And I don't want anybody poking the speaker cone and damaging it. So we're going to put one of these grills in just to be safe. The next thing you need is a sound system for your back box. Now, you can do this 2 ways. You can get 2 separate speakers and a subwoofer and another amplifier and do it that way. However, I've actually had a lot of good success, and I really like these Logitech speaker sets that are just used for your normal computer. So you got your 2.1 sound system here, and these are Bluetooth, which is kind of cool because you can set up your phone and sync it with this system. And so when you're playing pinball, if you literally want to play some tunes off of your cell phone, you can have it playing as well as the other stuff going on there. And you can volume control the music on your cell phone, whereas the rest of the controls is the rest of the pinball music. So really quite happy with these. In fact, when I was kind of just trying these out for the first time, I had a song playing pretty loudly in the background as I was hooking it up to see which connections I needed. And when it turned on, it was way too loud. And the bass and the performance and sound of this was mind-blowing. It was super loud, yet really quite crystal clear. Very impressive. I would highly recommend these ones. This is the Z407 Logitech computer speaker set and with Bluetooth. Next up, we need 18 gauge wire so that we can have a thick enough wire to be able to get the power without any kind of loss of voltage. And you can use just about any 18 gauge wire, but I'm using this nice red and black kind of 2 wires in one piece. That way it's kind of a little bit more altogether. And all you do is if you want to have them separate, you can just peel it apart. And to connect that 18 gauge wire, we're going to grab some of these female spade connectors. Now I've got the red colored ones or the red sleeved ones. That's for 22 to 18 gauge wire. And in my case, my exciters have 2 different sizes of the little male tab for the spade connectors, so I do need 2 different sizes for those. And the next thing is you're going to need an assortment of some wood screws so that you can actually fasten down your exciters and your bass shakers and all your different components. Now, some stuff with the wood screws is make sure that they are long enough that you're going to have enough strength to be able to keep them in place, as well as them not being so long that you're actually breaking through the material into the outside of the cabinet. Now, when you go to install these exciters, there's a bunch of things that you need to know. First thing is where you put these. At the front, you're going to want them as close as you can physically to your hands or the flipper buttons so that all those vibrations can be felt with your hands on the side of the cabinet. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here in the way, so I can't really put it right over where the buttons are, but if I put it right next to the buttons, and I've kept my tape that I used as a reference for where my playfield is going to sit. So as long as I stay away from the top edge of that tape, then I know it's not going to interfere with the playfield mount at all. So it's going to be somewhere like that. Now, the other thing is you do have 2 terminals here with wires coming off, so the orientation really doesn't matter. However, wherever you're pointing those wires and those connections, make sure they're going in the pathway that you want them when you mount them. Now, that's the front one. The rear one, same thing, you're going to the back of the cabinet. Don't go past the end of the monitor. Make sure it's not interfering with the actual mount itself. So mine's going to go like this, and I'm going to point the wires down. That way they're going down and I can route them nicely. Now, one of the last things is sometimes these exciters actually have a sticker that you have to peel back, and that allows you to stick this to the surface. Now, I'm not fully 100% trusting those ones, so I would recommend going with a screw type. However, the idea of this thing vibrating, and we have to try to transfer those vibrations as much as possible through to our cabinet. When I go to actually install these now, I'm just going to screw them in. But when I take this all apart and paint, when these go back in, I think I'm going to put a little bit of silicone here so that it helps make a complete surface and these connect properly. So I'm not losing any of those vibrations, and then I'll screw them in then. So cue the music. Let's put these in. Once you got the left side done, just continue with the right side. It's exactly the same thing. Now, as for the installation of these bass shakers, you're going to want them kind of installed somewhere on the center line of the cabinet. Obviously, you're going to put one of them near the front under the playfield and the other one at the back at the rear under the playfield. The only other thing is these connections here, just make them pointed towards where you want to have the wires routed. And these ones are a little different. These ones, they're spring loaded, and when you push down on it, it opens up a hole. You stick your wire in there, and when you let go of it, it grabs it. So a nice, neat little way of mounting those ones. So this one's going to go somewhat right like that. And then the back one I've actually previously installed during the power supply video because I knew the shelf was going to be in the way. So that's already done. If you want to see how that one was done, it's in the power supply video. Time to put in the speaker cover grill and mount that subwoofer box to the bottom of the cabinet so it's not floating around. Now there's a whole bunch of different ways that we could fasten this down securely to the cabinet. We could use some brackets like this, put a couple on the sides. However, I think that looks a little bit hokey, so I'm going to just go do the extra little mile and make it look a little better. So what I am going to do is I am going to drill 4 holes in here, and I'm actually going to screw in a couple of these that I have kind of sharpened and taken off the head of the screw. So once I've got these installed in like that, where those holes are, I can flip it over, press down on this to get these little points to make little dents in the wood, take it out, pre-drill it all the way through, and then from the underside I should be able to screw through the bottom of the cabinet up into this and just tight enough to make this nice and secure. Now if you are going to drill into these with either method, I would highly suggest very carefully taking out the speaker here, lifting it up and see what's in here and around where you're thinking about drilling, because it would be a nightmare to accidentally drill into some kind of circuit board or some kind of component inside here, and this doesn't work. Oh yeah, rock solid, and it looks nice and clean install from inside. Perfect. Moving on. Now, as for these back box speakers, they're meant to just kind of sit on top of a table, and I don't really want them loose in here whenever I'm moving the cabinet or lowering the back box. So what I was thinking I would do is position this exactly centered from left to right in the speaker grills, make a mark of where this base is with a pencil, and then take this off, pre-drill 2 holes and put in 2 screws so that this is screwed down into the cabinet, and make sure that it's as back far as it needs to be so that I can put the speaker in front to get this little tab to kind of join it back in with the bracket, and then that'll hold that down. Now this could still kind of vibrate loose and come off the base, so what I'm thinking is when I go to finally put in these after I've done paint and vinyl, I'll put a little bit of glue gun in there, squish it in, and then put some glue gun on the outside, and then that ain't going anywhere. Cool. Do the same thing on the other side. Easy peasy. Next thing you're going to want to do is figure out where these amplifiers and your external sound card is going to go. Now, I want these amplifiers up on the front here so that I can reach in through the coin door and make adjustments if I need to. Now, I'm going to position them so that the left is the front, so front right, and I'm going to put the external sound card right next to it. Now, I'm ready to put wiring, but I kind of want these to hold its position. So for right now, because I'm eventually going to take everything out and repaint in vinyl, I'm just going to use some tape and kind of loop it up on itself so that I can stick it underneath and have these stay put. But once this is all painted, or if yours is already painted, I suggest you use Velcro strips. Put it on the back of your amplifiers and your external sound card, and then the other one on the shelf, and then that'll keep it in place as well. Plus, it's got an added benefit of kind of stopping some of the vibrations from coming up into the amplifier. Now, when you're trying to figure out where your wiring is going to go for your audio system install, there's a really important thing to note. Never have your power cables right next to your audio cables. And the reason why is that when you put power down a wire, there is a weak magnetic field created. And if your audio cable is right next to it, it's going to saturate into that and pick it up. Then it goes to your amplifier and gets amplified. And then in your final music, you're going to actually hear humming, clicking, interference, noise that you don't really want. So just keep that in mind as you're planning this out and try to keep them as separate as possible. Onto the wires for the exciters. Now, one little quick thing to note is there's actually two different sizes on the exciters for the little spade connectors. And if you look really, really closely, it's not very well marked. The bigger, wider one is actually positive, so it's going to be a red wire. And then the skinnier, smaller spade connector is negative for your black wire. So don't mix those up. cool, the wires are all done for the exciters and the bass shakers. So on to our auxiliary cables, and I'm going to plug these into the amplifiers, and then I'm going to show you which ports we're going to actually use on that StarTech external sound card. Don't forget to put your ground loop isolators to your 3.5 auxiliary cable, and I'm going to put mine on the end closest to the amplifier that we are filtering everything up to just before it's getting amplified. Now, when you go to plug in the other end of your 3.5 auxiliary cables into your StarTech external sound card, you're going to have to know where they go. And it's not a traditional sound setup that you'd have at home. So your home surround sound would be your front, left, and right speakers, your sides, and your rear speakers. But in Pinball Cabinet, it's actually a little bit backwards, so just stick with me. The speakers, or the sound system you have for your music that comes out of your back box, that's going to go to your front jacks. The rear exciter and amp, that is going to be your sides. And the exciter and the amp at the front is actually going to be going to your rear. Your rear. So when you look at the StarTech, it actually says front 2.1. That's going to be your back box speakers. And then you've got your surround, which is your sides for your rear. And then you've got the back, which is going to be your front setup for your exciters. So let's go plug these in now. Now that everything is plugged in, it is a really good idea to just go through and double check all your wires, make sure all your connections are going to the right spots. That way you're not kind of frustrated figuring out why this won't work when you're in the back end and it's just a wiring issue. The other thing is I spent a couple minutes just to clean up the wires a bit temporarily. When I take this completely apart and paint and vinyl and put it together again, I will then start kind of routing all the wiring and properly and make it look nice. All right, cool. It's time to put the playfield down and turn the computer on. Now, from my research, I can tell that there is about half the people that use these StarTech external sound cards, and they have no problems with them all. And we've made 5, 6, 7 cabinets with them. And it is literally plug and play. Windows native drivers get installed, and it's a USB sound device, and it works fine. And then the other half have nothing but problems with these, and they literally almost get rid of them because of it. So that could be because it needs to have an additional driver that's downloaded right from StarTech. There might be another app from StarTech that you have to download and configure your setup. I really don't know. I'm going to learn, and you guys are going to learn with me to figure this out today and what we need. So let's go. All right, when I turned the computer on, it actually went right up into the front end and I had to kick out. So I didn't see if there was anything that popped up. So let's just take a look. So bottom left-hand corner, we're gonna go to the Windows Start symbol, click on it, go to the little gear here, click on Settings, and we want System. And we're gonna go to Sound. Now, yeah, sure enough, there's a USB sound device that's already put in here. So it looks like it installed something, but we're going to go over here and we're going to go to Sound Control Panel. And go down the list and look for it. Yeah, there it is, USB sound device. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and configure speakers. And right now it's only on stereo, so we're going to go to 7.1 and let's give it a test. Okay, left and right back box, center's not working, sub is not, oh. There we go. Yeah, there's all the exciters. Now, if we want, we can just click on one side here, and I can hold the side of the cabinet, and oh yeah, I can feel that vibrating. Put my hand on the other side. Yeah, perfect. Do the side right. Yeah. And side left. Perfect. Cool. All right, well, that seemed to work. Now keep in mind, this is literally just a test and see if they're working and you got the right kind of spots. Any kind of tweaking for your exciters and your bass for your exciters is gonna have to be from your amps. And while we're talking about amps, don't forget to turn on your amp. And I wouldn't turn it full blast, maybe go like 50% power for both. That way you're not struggling trying to figure out why you're not getting exciters working when the amps are literally off. So now that these are working, let's continue here. So we click next. And I don't have a center speaker, so I'm gonna click that off. I'm gonna keep the sub and keep the sides and rear pair. And for now, we'll leave these full range speakers. Yeah, sure. Click next. Click finish. All right, and if it said apply, I'd press it there, but otherwise it says okay. So, looks like literally the Windows native drivers found what I needed and it's working. But your experience might be different. You may actually have to go to StarTech and download the newest driver for it, and maybe the app for that StarTech external video card. Now, that is the speakers part. So now that that's set up, let's close this. And now we're going to get into the back end for VPX. So we're going to go to PC, C drive, vPinball, visual pinball. And we're going to scroll down to VPX. And it's going to ask for a table. I don't want a table right now. I just want to get into the actual program. So now we're going to go to Preferences. And we're going to go to Audio Options. So from this list here, we're going to go to the USB sound device. USB sound device. And we're going to switch it from 2-channel to 7.1 surround. And if you forgot which is which, it says here. So that way, if you forgot what wires go where, click OK. And all that's left here is to try a table. So we'll click back on VPX here. And why don't we start Getaway here. Now, so I don't have any issues with music on YouTube on the video, I'm going to turn down the 2.1 sound setup, so from the back box, so there won't be any music, and any sounds you hear is going to be literally the exciters on the table. All right, here we go. Here's put some money in. Nice. Oh, and I can feel it on the side of the cabinet here. Awesome. I'm already getting my huge grin here from the effects here that I'm feeling in the cabinet. So, nice. Massive sound, massive vibrations. Feels like I'm literally hitting a flipper. Perfect. Okay. Oh, ball rolling sounds. Awesome, awesome. Let's see if I get some pop bumpers here. So this is all sounds coming from the exciters. Let's see if I can get the supercharger shot for you. Awesome, awesome. All the sounds are coming right from where they should be. I'm feeling the vibrations and it's adding a lot to the game. Very cool. All right, so this is the StarTech external sound card here from the actual website. So let's take a look if there's a driver in case this is your issue that you need. So we got drivers and downloads. Drivers right here. Okay, if we go to where that folder is, and we can just double left click and take a look at what's in here. All right, so you can see that it's giving you a bunch of different drivers based off of what operating system you have. So for me, it would have been Windows 10 here. There is a setup here. There's an installation guide. There's a setup right there for it. So I'm not going to install this because literally it was plug and play. I won't need to do this. However, like I said, if you're having any problems and it didn't work the way I showed you, this might be something that you have to do. Some people have said they had to, but honestly, Windows 10, it just auto did it for me. So I'm not going to be showing this for you guys. You know, one of the things that came up in my research that people are having problems with the StarTech is that they noticed that every time there was a Windows automatic update, it would revert back to your 2.1 surround sound. So I'm going to show you how to disable your Windows updates. Now, this is something you could probably do right away. That way, once you have everything set up, it's not changing on you down the road and you're getting frustrated. So really quite easy. You're going to press the Windows key, the Windows symbol key, and R. And that is going to give you the run program. You're going to type in services.msc, press OK. Then you're going to scroll down till it says Windows Update. So right there. And then you're going to right click on it and you're going to go to Properties. And where it says Startup Type, you're going to put Disabled. Then click Stop so that it's not trying to run right now. Then click Apply. And click OK, and you're done. And this thing should not be doing Windows updates unless you come back in here and change this. Now, researching other golden gems for you guys that might be having problems getting your SSF working. Another one is if you are using a powered USB hub. If you can't get something working, then why don't you try just bypassing the USB hub, go right to the computer, and maybe that's your problem. You never know. Now, as with any kind of audio install, whether it's a pinball cabinet or your car, you don't just plug it in and drive off and hope it's okay. You do a little bit of tweaking. So highly adjust, you go in there with your amplifiers and kind of have a game going and tweak the treble and the bass and the volume so that you're getting exactly what you want from this. And if it's not, just kind of play with it back and forth until you get what you're happy with. Now, another thing that happens with audio installs is you often have things turned up because you want to hear that loud, which is great. However, there's going to be little vibrations, and considering we literally are vibrating this cabinet, you're going to want to hunt those out, search them out, and find out what that weird little rattle and that weird little vibration is. And it might simply be that you are shaking the cabinet too much and you might actually have to scale it down a little bit. Or you can literally silence out a latch that's loose or something that's vibrating and fix that problem. Now, once you have done those tweaks, there are some other things that you can help on the back end to be able to get the sound that you like as well. So there is one called Pinball, which allows you to adjust the volume for everything for individual tables, and that will save it on the fly. That sounds great because I already have a couple tables that are a little bit varying in volume. So that sounds like another future video as well. And there's some other programs that actually help you increase the bass. So there's one called Thump. And there's a couple other EQ kind of programs out there where you can go in the back end and adjust sound volumes and take things out and make it sound just right. Now, when you go to adjust your power amplifier settings, there are two. So I'm only going to show you on the one here, and it's the one for the front so I can operate my flippers while I'm talking here. Now, these two knobs are for your bass shaker here. The first one is frequency, and as you adjust that, you are telling the amplifier what frequencies do you want to send to the sub, and then anything higher on the knob would be cut off and sent to your exciters. So if you're finding that these are not bassy enough for you, you might want to increase your frequency. Next one is the volume for your bass shaker. And so if you have it too low, so I'll adjust this right down, you'll notice that it's a bit clicky. There's not a lot of bass to it. Sounds a bit tinny, so I'll be quiet so you can hear it. And as I turn it up, you should hear it sound a bit chunkier, a bit bassier. Like that. Okay, and then these two knobs here are for your treble and your bass for your exciters. The best way I can explain how to adjust these is make a sound constantly, so just one after another, like your flippers, and you're going to adjust these by ear to make the sound about right. If it sounds too tinny and hollow, you're going to add some bass to it. If it sounds too echoey and boomy and bassy, then you're going to have to turn the bass down and turn the treble up. So this one's a bit hard to tell you how to adjust it. Just listen to it by ear and make it sound appropriate. And this one here is for the volume for the exciters. Now, these things are 12 volt to 24 volt input. I don't know how people are powering these with 24 volts because, to be honest with you, I'm turning these up for the max settings and they are so loud, they're like ridiculous. They're not sounding appropriate at all. So you're going to have to adjust these to the volume that you like and the vibration that you like, because remember, it's not just the sound, you're actually adjusting how hard these are vibrating as well. Now, the other issue you're going to probably run into is that as you increase the volume to make these sound nice and loud and give a lot of vibrations, you may start having your nudge kind of kicking in, even just from regular gameplay and hitting a flipper button. And if it's set too high, that will happen too much and you'll end up with tilts as well. So there's about 3 things you can adjust there. You can adjust these knobs so that it doesn't do that. You can put a vibration matting and try to reduce some of the vibrations going to your KL25Z board. And then the third thing is go back into the settings for your nudge settings and your tilt settings, and you can play with those settings, make it a little bit less sensitive so that you can crank up your SSF. Now, a couple other things just so you're aware of. If you are doing any FX3 table stuff, you're going to have a program called DOF Links, which is not set up on here at all, so I won't get into that at all. And Future Pinball Table is in stereo. Now, the only way that you can actually get the playfield SSF effects is if it has an SSF pup pack to go with that. So just things to think of in case you're really struggling trying to get a Future Pinball Table that you really love to play and it's not working. It might be because of that. It's a wrap in another video from Way of the Wrench, and this time getting your SSF set up for your virtual pinball cabinet. Now, I made it look pretty easy, and to be honest, it was plug and play. It was pretty good. So I realized there might be some people out there that it was not this easy and you had difficulties. So if you have any problems, put a comment down below and I will try to help you out as much as possible. And there are a ton of really, really dedicated people in the virtual pinball community. So if I miss something in here and you know of a fix for it, please put it in the comment section below and I will write an addendum to my description in the video and have all these kind of tips and tricks for people to kind of find this information and get them going quickly. Next video up is going to be DOF. Here's another term that we might not know. DOF, Direct Output Framework. And what that's going to do is tell anything that's going on the screen something externally so we can have a light flash and do kind of a dot matrix display and things like that in the future. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you haven't followed us already, we're on Instagram, Way of the Wrench. That way you can see all the stuff going on behind the scenes. Till next time, take it easy.